And so starting off, talk to me about how big of an issue that human trafficking and slavery as a whole is in Texas and in this area.
Sure. Human trafficking is a big problem. I think people have become more aware of it recently, but it's still something that flies under the radar. That's the nature of the crime. Traffickers are finding people, whether for labor or for sex trafficking, and exploiting them, making money off them, and they do it kind of out of sight, so it's out of mind and not where people see it happening every day, so they don't realize that it's going on in their neighborhoods.
And as you mentioned, they don't realize it's taking place in their neighborhoods. Where are areas that you guys see this pop up? Is it everywhere? Is it specific areas?
Sex trafficking happens really at any hotel. Some hotels are better than others at reporting it if they see suspicious activity, but these traffickers move their victims around, so they don't stay in one place. That's what makes them hard to catch, but it can also make it happen anywhere. Labor trafficking tends to happen in certain businesses, whether it be agriculture or restaurant work, things like that.
And what makes here in specific a problem area?
Smith County and East Texas, we're a corridor for a lot of places, whether it's people coming up from the south, from Houston up to go north, or traveling east to west from Dallas to Shreveport or other places. There's a lot of people passing through, and that's what traffickers do. They move through areas, bring their victims, make money off of them, and then move on to somewhere else.
And how often do you guys sort of find these different cases that pop up?
We're always coming across different trafficking victims that are related to other kinds of cases, whether it be a narcotics case or a prostitution case. We're encountering those victims, trying to help them, trying to provide a way out of the life that they're trapped in, if we can.
And how do these people sort of get trapped in this cycle? From talking with victims in the past, what are some ways that you sort of seen them end up getting trapped into this?
Traffickers are very skilled at finding vulnerable victims. So these are victims who don't have family support systems, they don't have anywhere to go, and then they enhance that. They isolate them, take away their identification, take away their funds. They don't have credit cards, they don't have cell phones. So they really have nowhere to go and no one to call. And then moving them around makes them even more isolated because they're not somewhere they could walk home or find a friend.
And for just people who are out in day-to-day life, are there things that you recommend people to look out for and maybe just make note of or talk to somebody about if they see something that may raise a red flag to them?
There are lots of things you can look for, and the state of Texas has put notifications like signs in different businesses and hospitals so that, if it's, say, someone who cuts hair notices that their client is actually sort of being overshadowed by a male who's brought them in, not letting them speak, or someone in a hospital has been brought in for injuries, but there's kind of someone overbearing there that's keeping track of them. These are all signs that the person may not be there willingly. And so it's good if you suspect something to let somebody know or call the police. They're happy to check on it and see if it's okay or if it's not okay. And if it is, then no harm, no foul.
And of course, you brought up a couple of the other ways that people may be trafficked, of course, for the workforce as well. But for sex trafficking, that may be the main thing that some people think of when it comes to this. But for those other areas, people should be more on the lookout for some of these different areas of workforces that people should be maybe potentially in. What are some of those that you've seen?
Yeah, the labor trafficking tends to happen, like I said, restaurants or in agricultural areas. It's the same kind of idea. If you see something that looks suspicious to you, looks like it's a business, but the people appear to be living there. So we see that sometimes with massage parlors or restaurants. Maybe there's a cot and they're sleeping there. They're not free to go anywhere else. That's going to be an indication that they're not free to leave and they're trapped there.
And how do you guys sort of get to the bottom of these cases and ensure the people that have trapped them within this cycle are caught?
Sex trafficking is particularly difficult. Like I said, these victims don't have anywhere to go, so they need a lot of support systems. We have some really good nonprofits in East Texas that want to help them. We have Unbound Now, we have For the Silent, we have a intermediate home called Selah where they can stay while they get back on their feet. Law enforcement has those contacts, and if they can identify the victims, they can help them get connected with those services so they can get identification, they can find a job, they can get clean if they've been drugged. These are all important services those victims are going to need.
And of course, in previous coverage that we've had with this awareness, you mentioned that victim cooperation is sort of the key to being able to open this up. Is that something that still can be difficult to acquire?
These victims in sex trafficking have often been brainwashed, and they also have what the law calls force, fraud, or coercion. So they have been coerced and made really afraid of what the system is going to do to them. They're afraid they'll be arrested, afraid they'll be incarcerated. So it takes a lot of work to help them understand we're actually here to help them. We want to get them out of that life. We actually want to get their trafficker and put that person in jail so that they're not exploiting other people. But they have been brainwashed to believe that's not going to happen. So it does take quite a bit of work to convince them that we're here to help.
And as you mentioned, the fear of potentially having charges put against them, how big of an issue is that to where some of these people may have charges levied on them because of the situation that they're in?
It's a big fear they have. One of the reasons would be traffickers look for people who might have some criminal history already. So they might have been arrested for shoplifting or something small. They've had a bad experience with law enforcement. That actually makes them vulnerable to being trafficked because they're already afraid of law enforcement and they're not likely to reach out to them for help.
And with SB 11 going into effect, has that sort of helped in getting some more of this victim cooperation more than it has in the past maybe?
Yeah, we're hopeful SB 11, which provides a defense for trafficking victims. If they're forced to do a crime because they're a victim, that would be a defense to prosecution. We're hopeful that that will make awareness to them and other DA's offices and law enforcement that these are exploited victims who don't need to be prosecuted for what they've done, but they need to be helped.
And of course, making sure that they get help. How important is it that these victims are able to get that separation from whatever crimes they were involved in, be able to move on with their life?
That's really the hardest thing with trafficking is getting those victims to a place of safety where they can trust that the trafficker's not going to find them and that they're not going to be looped back into this life that they feel stuck in. They really feel like they have nowhere to go, and convincing them that there are people who really want to help them and are not going to exploit them is a big challenge. But if you can get there, you can really transform someone's life.
And as you mentioned previously at the beginning of the interview, of course, this being a corridor for a lot of it, with an area like this, does it almost make it a little bit more difficult to be able to track people down sometimes because of the area we're in?
Absolutely. What these trafficking victims need is stability, and what traffickers do is remove stability. They're moving them around place to place, preventing them from having stability. So when we come into their lives, we're trying to let them know if they will come to us for help, we can give them the thing that they don't have, which is a stable place with people who care about them.
And of course, being connected to another state in Louisiana and another major metroplex in Dallas, how pivotal has been working with them be in terms of helping solve some of these cases?
And these cases do involve lots of jurisdictions, whether, like you said, coming from Dallas across the interstate over to Louisiana, Arkansas, Oklahoma. So being able to track them and figure out where they're going, where they've been in the past, can be really helpful. And we try to work as well as we can with our other law enforcement partners.
And now talk to me about how important a month like this is with human trafficking awareness.
Well, because human trafficking really is a thing in every single community, and we think that we might be immune to it here in East Texas, but the reality is it is right in our own backyard. And we're just honored to be highlighted and be able to just share how important this is, that in the last year we have served 40 women at our safe home here in Smith County. And we are emergency stabilization, so serving women immediately out of rescue for the first up to 90 days to help them get stabilized, lower their fight or flight, feel safe, of course, to have proper nutrition, medical care through our partners at Bethesda Health Clinic, and then get them into a long-term facility where they can work on things like their GED or documentation or their driver's license and those kinds of things.
And how big of an issue is human trafficking in Texas and the area around us here?
Texas actually is number 2 in the country for trafficking. Amazing to imagine. And from the corridor over from Dallas and up from Houston, Tyler and I-20 just lie right here. And so it's a major corridor for this that people would not even realize that it's happening.
And how do people sort of get trapped into this cycle of human trafficking?
Well, what we've seen in our home is that there's a myriad of ways. It really can be coming out of the foster care system where you have a lot of brokenness and that girls are vulnerable and that are easily persuaded by young men or older men. We've also seen it really heartbreakingly that it's very young children that are trafficked by their parents that are involved in drugs or needing to sell their children, believe it or not, for a bag of groceries. And then it can be that it's young women in high school or college that have put and found themselves in compromising positions, and then that is held over their head, and out of shame, they now are coerced into doing favors for or selling themselves for things that they never would have ever chosen to do, and it's just really heartbreaking.
And what are some of the reasons why people are brought into trafficking? Talking with the DA, there seems to be a couple of different routes that people are put into whenever they get into this cycle.
Well, like that's what I would say is that, you know, either parents that they are in, poverty plays a huge role. Drugs can play a huge role, and that they're in a terrible situation, and that's what they think that they can sell their child to help them get out of that. Or again, the foster care system is just a lot of brokenness within that, and kids that have not felt valued or worth or have had great worth or dignity, and they're looking for love in all of the wrong places, and pretty soon they're wrapped up in something that they had no idea, and they very quickly are to a level of abuse and often drugged and sold so many times a day that their whole psyche is completely damaged. And that's what we have found with neurofeedback that we offer. We're one of only, we don't know of another center in the country that offers neurofeedback. And that really helps to lower fight or flight, give them an opportunity to focus, to be able to journal more, and to really start beginning to heal the brain activity and form new neuro pathways to make new experiences and memories so that they're not stuck in old patterns of behavior.
And with you guys, of course, you guys help rehabilitate them out of that cycle. Is this something that sort of helps, of course, talking with the DA, victim cooperation is one of the main things that helps catch the people who did it. Mm-hmm. Is that something that helps open up and be able to help catch the people who did this to them in a way?
Well, for sure. So law enforcement was in a position where they could only put them in maybe a hotel for a couple of nights. And to get into a long-term facility takes quite a period of time and interviews, et cetera. We serve as that initial emergency stabilization facility. If they are stabilized first, their chance of long-term success goes from 47% to 80%. So being able to do that immediate care, health care, medical care, neurofeedback, and lowering their fight or flight really does make an impact for their long-term success.
And victim cooperation, of course, coming out of a cycle of that, is that still something that's still a barrier to try and get over to get that cooperation, as they may not want to think about what just happened to them?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, there's a lot of shame and guilt and fear, of course, that's been put on them. They have been absolutely coerced, blackmailed in many ways, and believe that their family could be harmed, that they could be harmed. They might have children that they've been told that could be harmed if they don't cooperate and go along with these things. And so just training their brain, getting them into a place that they can see that there's hope for their future, and that law enforcement, there are victim advocates that are really great partners within law enforcement that have helped us greatly to help bring about prosecution to those that have been selling women, also purchasing, but also, primarily we're talking about the trafficker. And so, yes, we're very grateful for our law enforcement partnerships.
And with the bill, SB 11, that sort of helps give some of those protections to the victims, do you see that has helped in terms of helping people open up a little bit more, knowing they have protection from some things that may have been done?
Yeah, I would say even in this last year, since we opened in September of 24, that we had women that would absolutely not even consider filing charges out of fear. Now we have had, even the last handful of girls we've had are all being open to saying, yes, I'm willing to file charges or to press charges, I should say, and to follow through with that, because they do feel like that yes, they were victims, they were coerced, and in that event that they have some protection and that they're not the criminal in this really unfortunate event.
And how important is it that these victims are able to get that separation from their abusers and be able to fully move on with their life?
Well, it's critically important that they are able to find a hope for their future, that they are oftentimes drugged, they are not able to pursue any kind of real employment, they're not able to pursue any kind of educational goals for their life, and to get out from underneath that and to be able to see like, oh wow, I could pursue having a job at some point, caring for myself, that I can find independence and worth and dignity is really amazing to see.
And along with the bill, but just overall, do you feel like that there's been strides taken towards helping these victims more and more and making trafficking harder to continue throughout the area?
I think we have a long way to go, for sure. But yes, I do think that there's much more awareness in recent years, and that with our law enforcement partners, that they're more engaged, educated, seeing the women as the victim, and all of those things together, that we have a good coalition of people that can help. I'm sorry about that.
No, you're fine.
Okay.
And one of the things that I was just picking back up, and that was the last question, but it's just me with some follow-ups. You mentioned identification. Is there cases where their identity is basically just taken away from them in these trafficking cases?
Oh, for sure. And like we have a girl currently right now that literally jumped out of a car to escape her trafficker, and from that she left every single thing behind. So it's starting from scratch, like getting a new identification. She has no phone, she has no contact, she has absolutely nothing, and that comes with a lot of, honestly, just fear of like, now what? How do I even begin again in any way? So yes, we have had probably the majority of women do not have identification.
And how difficult of a hurdle is that to try and get something like that back? Of course, a lot of people can probably say getting documents can be extremely difficult, but in a case like this where they have nothing, just how hard can that be?
Well, typically in short term, we can start the process. Long term has done and seen a lot of that, and so they will follow up in that way over the next number of months. And so yes, they can get documentation again and their ID again, health insurance, that we can arrange also for them, but it does take time. But in an emergency placement, we're just doing the very beginning, basic steps.
And just for curiosity's sake for me, I know with these cases, of course, is it something where they go back to their previous name, or is there cases where they would get a different name that they would go under to try and help protect them? Or is it mainly just trying to get their old identity back?
So I would say the majority is just getting their identity back. That in huge cases, that it might be interstate trafficking that happens. If higher level law enforcement or the FBI were involved, that could include name changes, but that's going to be a much bigger case issue that we're talking about.
And with this identification, I mean, just how pivotal is that to be able to get their life back, to be able to go out and start getting back into the workforce and maybe getting that GED like you mentioned?
That's right. Well, I mean, just like all of us, if you kind of begin with having an identification for everything. So it's from any kind of medical care. Thank God for Bethesda Health Clinic here that really partners with us. We're so grateful for that. But they do need that initial ID to be able to do anything. Yeah.
And just wrapping up, is there anything else that I've not asked about the awareness or about the bill, or anything else that I have not asked about that you would like to add that you feel is important to add or clarify?
I would say that for Selah in this community and in East Texas, that we're really uniquely positioned because our community has rallied around us to help support us financially, tangibly, in so many ways, and that the fact that we've seen 40 women in a year is incredible, that there's such a huge, much bigger need, but that for a one-year-old ministry, that the impact that we have had, thanks to those in our community that have partnered with us, we are just enormously grateful.